Chapter 6. The Tiger Swami. I have discovered the Tiger Swami's address. Let us visit him tomorrow. This welcome suggestion came from Chandi, one of my high school friends. I was eager to meet the saint who, in his premonastic life, had caught and fought tigers with his naked hands. A boyish enthusiasm over such remarkable feats was strong within me. The next day dawned wintry cold, but Chandi and I sallied forth gaily. After much vain hunting in Bhawanipoor, outside Calcutta, we arrived at the right house. The door held 2 iron rings, which I sounded piercingly. Notwithstanding the clamour, a servant approached with leisurely gait. His ironical smile implied that visitors, despite their noise, were powerless to disturb the calmness of a saint's home. Feeling the silent rebuke, my companion and I were thankful to be invited into the parlour. Our long wait there caused uncomfortable misgivings. India's unwritten law for the truth-seeker is patience. A master may purposely make a test of one's eagerness to meet him. This psychological ruse is freely employed in the West by doctors and dentists. Finally summoned by the servant, Chandi and I entered a sleeping apartment. The famous Sohang Swami was seated on his bed. The sight of his tremendous body affected us strangely. With bulging eyes, we stood speechless. We had never before seen such a chest or such football-like biceps. On an immense neck, the Swami's fierce yet calm face was adorned with flowing locks, beard and mustache. A hint of dove-like and tiger-like qualities shone in his dark eyes. He was unclothed, save for a tiger skin about his muscular waist. Finding our voices, my friend and I greeted the monk, expressing our admiration for his prowess in the extraordinary feline arena. "Will you not tell us, please, how it is possible to subdue with bare fists the most ferocious of jungle beasts, the royal Bengals?" "My sons, it is nothing to me to fight tigers. I could do it today if necessary." He gave a childlike laugh. "You look upon tigers as tigers. I know them as pussycats." "Swamiji, I think I could impress my subconsciousness with the thought that tigers are pussycats. But could I make tigers believe it?" "Of course, strength also is necessary. One cannot expect victory from a baby who imagines a tiger to be a house cat. Powerful hands are my sufficient weapon." He asked us to follow him to the patio, where he struck the edge of a wall. A brick crashed to the floor. The sky peered boldly through the gaping lost tooth of the wall. I fairly staggered in astonishment. He who can remove mortared bricks from a solid wall with one blow, I thought, must surely be able to displace the teeth of tigers. A number of men have physical power such as mine, but still lack in cool confidence. Those who are bodily, but not mentally stalwart, may find themselves fainting at mere sight of a wild beast bounding freely in the jungle. The tiger, in its natural ferocity and habitat, is vastly different from the opium-fed circus animal. Many a man with Herculean strength has nonetheless been terrorized into abject helplessness before the onslaught of a royal Bengal. Thus the tiger has converted the man in his own mind to a state as nerveless as the pussycats. It is possible for a man, owning a fairly strong body and an immensely strong determination, to turn the tables on the tiger and force it to a conviction of pussycat defenselessness. How often I have done just that. I was quite willing to believe that the Titan before me was able to perform the tiger-pussycat metamorphosis. He seemed in a didactic mood. Chandi and I listened respectfully. Mind is the wielder of muscles. The force of a hammer blow depends on the energy applied. The power expressed by a man's bodily instrument depends on his aggressive will and courage. The body is literally manufactured and sustained by mind. Through pressure of instincts from past lives, Strengths or weaknesses percolate gradually into human consciousness. They express as habits, which in turn ossify into a desirable or an undesirable body. Outward frailty has mental origin. In a vicious circle, the habit-bound body thwarts the mind. If the master allows himself to be commanded by a servant, the latter becomes autocratic. The mind is similarly enslaved by submitting to bodily dictation. At our entreaty, the impressive Swami consented to tell us something of his own life. My earliest ambition was to fight tigers. My will was mighty, but my body was feeble. An ejaculation of surprise broke from me. It appeared incredible that this man, now with Atlantean shoulders fit to bear, could ever have known weakness. It was by indomitable persistency in thoughts of health and strength that I overcame my handicap. I have every reason to extol the compelling mental vigor which I found to be the real subduer of royal Bengals. Do you think, revered Swami, that I could ever fight tigers? This was the first and the last time that the bizarre ambition ever visited my mind. Yes, he was smiling. But there are many kinds of tigers. Some roam in jungles of human desires. No spiritual benefit accrues by knocking beasts unconscious. Rather be victor over the inner prowlers. May we hear, sir, how you changed from a tamer of wild tigers to a tamer of wild passions? The Tiger Swami fell into silence. Remoteness came into his gaze, summoning visions of bygone years. I discerned his slight mental struggle to decide whether to grant my request. Finally, he smiled in acquiescence. When my fame reached a zenith, it brought the intoxication of pride. I decided not only to fight tigers, but to display them in various tricks. My ambition was to force savage beasts to behave like domesticated ones. I began to perform my feats publicly, with gratifying success. One evening my father entered my room in pensive mood. Son, I have words of warning. I would save you from coming ills, produced by the grinding wheels of cause and effect. Are you a fatalist, father? Should superstition be allowed to discolor the powerful waters or my activities? I am no fatalist, son, but I believe in the just law of retribution, as taught in the Holy Scriptures. There is resentment against you in the jungle family. Sometime it may act to your cost. Father, you astonish me. You well know what tigers are, beautiful but merciless, even immediately after an enormous meal of some hapless creature. A tiger is fired with fresh lust at sight of new prey. It may be a joyous gazelle frisking over the jungle grass. Capturing it and biting an opening in the soft throat, the malevolent beast tastes only a little of the mutely crying blood and goes its wanton way. Tigers are the most contemptible of the jungle breed. Who knows? My blows may inject some slight sanity of consideration into their thick heads. I am headmaster in a forest finishing school to teach them gentle manners. Please, Father, think of me as tiger tamer and never as tiger killer. How could my good actions bring ill upon me? I beg you not to impose any command that I change my way of life. Chandi and I were all attention, understanding the past dilemma. In India, a child does not lightly disobey his parents' wishes. In stoic silence, Father listened to my explanation. He followed it with a disclosure which he uttered gravely. Son, you compel me to relate an ominous prediction from the lips of a saint. He approached me yesterday as I sat on the veranda in my daily meditation. Dear friend, I come with a message for your belligerent son. Let him cease his savage activities. Otherwise, his next tiger encounter shall result in his severe wounds, followed by 6 months of deathly sickness. He shall then forsake his former ways and become a monk. This tale did not impress me. I considered that father had been the credulous victim of a deluded fanatic. The Tiger Swami made this confession with an impatient gesture, as though at some stupidity. Grimly silent for a long time, he seemed oblivious of our presence. When he took up the dangling thread of his narrative, it was suddenly, with subdued voice. Not long after father's warning, I visited the capital city of Cooch Behar. The picturesque territory was new to me, and I expected a restful change. As usual everywhere, a curious crowd followed me on the streets. I would catch bits of whispered comment. "This is the man who fights wild tigers. Has he legs or tree trunks? Look at his face. He must be an incarnation of the king of tigers himself." You know how village urchins function, like final editions of a newspaper. With what speed do the even later speech bulletins of the women circulate from house to house? Within a few hours, the whole city was in a state of excitement over my presence. I was relaxing quietly in the evening when I heard the hoofbeats of galloping horses. They stopped in front of my dwelling place. In came a number of tall, turbaned policemen. I was taken aback. All things are possible unto these creatures of human law, I thought. I wonder if they are going to take me to task about matters utterly unknown to me. But the officers bowed with unwonted courtesy. "Honored sir, we are sent to welcome you on behalf of the Prince of Cooch Behar. He is pleased to invite you to his palace tomorrow morning." I speculated a while on the prospect. For some obscure reason, I felt sharp regret at this interruption in my quiet trip. But the suppliant manner of the policeman moved me. I agreed to go. I was bewildered the next day to be obsequiously escorted from my door into a magnificent coach drawn by 4 horses. A servant held an ornate umbrella to protect me from the scorching sunlight. I enjoyed the pleasant ride through the city and its woodland outskirts. The royal scion himself was at the palace door to welcome me. He proffered his own gold-brocaded seat, smilingly placing himself in a chair of simpler design. All this politeness is certainly going to cost me something, I thought in mounting astonishment. The prince's motive emerged after a few casual remarks. "My city is filled with the rumor that you can fight wild tigers with nothing more than your naked hands. Is it a fact?" "It is quite true." "I can scarcely believe it. You are a Calcutta Bengali, nurtured on the white rice of city folk. Be frank, please. Have you not been fighting only spineless, opium-fed animals?" His voice was loud and sarcastic, tinged with provincial accent. I vouchsafed no reply to his insulting question. "I challenge you to fight my newly caught tiger, Raja Begum, 6-2. If you can successfully resist him, bind him with a chain, and leave his cage in a conscious state, you shall have this royal Bengal. Several thousand rupees and many other gifts shall also be bestowed. If you refuse to meet him in combat, I shall blazon your name throughout the state as an impostor." His insolent words struck me like a volley of bullets. I shot an angry acceptance. Half risen from the chair in his excitement, the prince sank back with a sadistic smile. I was reminded of the Roman emperors who delighted in setting Christians in bestial arenas. "The match will be set for a week hence. I regret that I cannot give you permission to view the tiger in advance." Whether the prince feared I might seek to hypnotize the beast or secretly feed him opium, I know not. I left the palace, noting with amusement that the royal umbrella and panoplied coach were now missing. The following week, I methodically prepared my mind and body for the coming ordeal. Through my servant, I learned of fantastic tales. The saint's direful prediction to my father had somehow got abroad, enlarging as it ran. Many simple villagers believed that an evil spirit, cursed by the gods, had reincarnated as a tiger which took various demoniac forms at night, but remained a striped animal during the day. This demon tiger was supposed to be the one sent to humble me. Another imaginative version was that animal prayers to Tiger Heaven had achieved a response in the shape of Raja Begum. He was to be the instrument to punish me, the audacious biped so insulting to the entire tiger species. A furless, fangless man, daring to challenge a claw-armed, sturdy-limbed tiger. The concentrated venom of all humiliated tigers, the villagers declared, had gathered momentum sufficient to operate hidden laws and bring about the fall of the proud tiger tamer. My servant further apprised me that the prince was in his element as manager of the bout between man and beast. He had supervised the erection of a storm-proof pavilion designed to accommodate thousands. Its center held a Raja Begum in an enormous iron cage, surrounded by an outer safety room. The captive emitted a ceaseless series of blood-curdling roars. He was fed sparingly, to kindle a wrathful appetite. Perhaps the prince expected me to be the meal of reward. Crowds from the city and suburbs bought tickets eagerly in response to the beat of drums announcing the unique contest. The day of battle saw hundreds turned away for lack of seats. Many men broke through the tent openings or crowded any space below the galleries. As the Tiger Swami's story approached a climax, my excitement mounted with it. Chandi also was raptly mute. Amidst piercing sound explosions from Raja Begum and the hubbub of the somewhat terrified crowd, I quietly made my appearance. Scantily clad around the waist, I was otherwise unprotected by clothing. I opened the bolt on the door of the safety room and calmly locked it behind me. The tiger sensed blood. Leaping with a thunderous crash on his bars, he sent forth a fearsome welcome. The audience was hushed with pitiful fear. I seemed a meek lamb before the raging beast. In a trice I was within the cage, but as I slammed the door, Raja Begum was headlong upon me. My right hand was desperately torn. Human blood, the greatest treat a tiger can know, fell in appalling streams. The prophecy of the saint seemed about to be fulfilled. I rallied instantly from the shock of the first serious injury I had ever received. Banishing the sight of my gory fingers by thrusting them beneath my waistcloth, I swung my left arm in a bone-cracking blow. The beast reeled back, swirled around the rear of the cage, and sprang forward convulsively. My famous fistic punishment rained on his head. But Raja Begum's taste of blood had acted like the maddening first sip of wine to a dipsomaniac long deprived. Punctuated by deafening roar, the brute's assaults grew in fury. My inadequate defense of only one hand left me vulnerable before claws and fangs. But I dealt out dazing retribution. Mutually ensanguined, we struggled as to the death. The cage was pandemonium, as blood splashed in all directions, and blasts of pain and lethal lust came from the bestial throat. "Shoot him! Kill the tiger!" Shrieks arose from the audience. So fast did man and beast move that a guard's bullet went amiss. I mustered all my will force, bellowed fiercely, and landed a final concussive blow. The tiger collapsed and lay quietly. "Like a pussy cat," I interjected. The Swami laughed in a hearty appreciation, then continued the engrossing tale. Raja Begum was vanquished at last. His royal pride was further humbled. With my lacerated hands, I audaciously forced open his jaws. For a dramatic moment, I held my head within the yawning death trap. I looked around for a chain. Pulling one from a pile on the floor, I bound the tiger by his neck to the cage bars. In triumph, I moved toward the door. But that fiend incarnate, Raja Begum had stamina worthy of his supposed demoniac origin. With an incredible lunge, he snapped the chain and leaped on my back. My shoulder fast in his jaws, I fell violently. But in a trice I had him pinned beneath me. Under merciless blows, the treacherous animal sank into semi-consciousness. This time I secured him more carefully. Slowly, I left the cage. I found myself in a new uproar, this time one of delight. The crowd's cheer broke as though from a single gigantic throat. Disastrously mauled, I had yet fulfilled the 3 conditions of the fight: stunning the tiger, binding him with a chain, and leaving him without requiring assistance for myself. In addition, I had so drastically injured and frightened the aggressive beast that he had been content to overlook the opportune prize of my head in his mouth. After my wounds were treated, I was honored and garlanded. Hundreds of gold pieces showered at my feet. The whole city entered a holiday period. Endless discussions were heard on all sides about my victory over one of the largest and most savage tigers ever seen. Raja Begum was presented to me as promised, but I felt no elation. A spiritual change had entered my heart. It seemed that with my final exit from the cage, I had also closed the door on my worldly ambitions. A woeful period followed. For 6 months, I lay near death from blood poisoning. As soon as I was well enough to leave Kuch Behar, I returned to my native town. I know now that my teacher is the holy man who gave the wise warning. I humbly made this confession to my father. Oh, if I could only find him! My longing was sincere, for one day the saint arrived unheralded. Enough of tiger taming. He spoke with calm assurance. Come with me. I will teach you to subdue the beasts of ignorance roaming in jungles of the human mind. You are used to an audience. Let it be a galaxy of angels entertained by your thrilling mastery of yoga. I was initiated into the spiritual path by my saintly guru. He opened my soul doors, rusty and resistant with long disuse. Hand in hand, we soon set out for my training in the Himalayas. Chandi and I bowed at the Swami's feet, grateful for his vivid outline of a life truly cyclonic. I felt amply repaid for the long probationary wait in the cold parlor. Chapter 7. The Levitating Saint. I saw a yogi remain in the air several feet above the ground. Last night at a group meeting. My friend Upendra Mohun Chowdhury spoke impressively. I gave him an enthusiastic smile. Perhaps I can guess his name. Was it Bhaduri Mahasaya of Upper Circular Road? Upendra nodded, a little crestfallen not to be a news-bearer. My inquisitiveness about saints was well known among my friends. They delighted in setting me on a fresh track. The yogi lives so close to my home that I often visit him. My words brought keen interest to Upendra's face, and I made a further confidence. I have seen him in remarkable feats. He has expertly mastered the various pranayamas of the ancient eightfold yoga outlined by Patanjali. Once Bhaduri Mahasaya performed the Bastrika pranayama before me with such amazing force that it seemed an actual storm had arisen in the room. Then he extinguished the thundering breath and remained motionless in a high state of superconsciousness. The aura of peace after the storm was vivid beyond forgetting. I heard that the saint never leaves his home? Upendra's tone was a trifle incredulous. Indeed, it is true. He has lived indoors for the past 20 years. He slightly relaxes his self-imposed rule at the times of our holy festivals, when he goes as far as his front sidewalk. The beggars gather there because Saint Bhaduri is known for his tender heart. How does he remain in the air, defying the law of gravitation? A yogi's body loses its grossness after use of certain pranayamas. Then it will levitate or hop about like a leaping frog. Even saints who do not practice a formal yoga have been known to levitate during a state of intense devotion to God. I would like to know more of this sage. Do you attend his evening meetings? Upendra's eyes were sparkling with curiosity. Yes, I go often. I am vastly entertained by the wit in his wisdom. Occasionally my prolonged laughter mars the solemnity of his gatherings. The saint is not displeased, but his disciples look daggers. On my way home from school that afternoon, I passed Baduri Mahasaya's cloister and decided on a visit. The yogi was inaccessible to the general public. A lone disciple, occupying the ground floor, guarded his master's privacy. The student was something of a martinet. He now inquired formally if I had an engagement his guru put in an appearance just in time to save me from summary ejection. Let Mukunda come when he will. The sage's eyes twinkled. My rule of seclusion is not for my own comfort, but for that of others. Worldly people do not like the candor which shatters their delusions. Saints are not only rare but disconcerting. Even in scripture, they are often found embarrassing. I followed Baduri Mahasaya to his austere quarters on the top floor, from which he seldom stirred. Masters often ignore the panorama of the world's Edu, out of focus till centered in the ages. The contemporaries of a sage are not alone those of the narrow present. Maharishi, you are the first yogi I have known who always stays indoors. God plants his saints sometimes in unexpected soil, lest we think we may reduce him to a rule. The sage locked his vibrant body in the lotus posture. In his 70s, he displayed no unpleasing signs of age or sedentary life. Stalwart and straight, he was ideal in every respect. His face was that of a rishi, as described in the ancient texts. Noble-headed, abundantly bearded, he always sat firmly upright, his quiet eyes fixed on omnipresence. Baduri Mahasaya, the levitating saint. Sir, I inquired, why do you not write a book on yoga for the benefit of the world? I am training disciples, he replied. They and their students will be living volumes, proof against the natural disintegrations of time and the unnatural interpretations of the critics. The saint and I entered the meditative state. After an hour, his gentle voice roused me. You go often into the silence, but have you developed Anubhava? He was reminding me to love God more than meditation. Do not mistake the technique for the goal. He offered me some mangoes. With that good-humored wit that I found so delightful in his grave nature, he remarked, people in general are more fond of Jala Yoga, union with food, than of Dhyana Yoga, union with God. His yogic pun affected me uproariously. What a laugh you have. An affectionate gleam came into his gaze. His own face was always serious, yet touched with an ecstatic smile. His large lotus eyes held a hidden divine laughter. Those letters come from far-off America. The sage indicated several thick envelopes on a table. I correspond with a few societies there whose members are interested in yoga. They are discovering India anew, with a better sense of direction than Columbus. I am glad to help them. The knowledge of yoga is free to all who will receive, like the ungarnishable daylight. What rishis perceived as essential for human salvation need not be diluted for the West. Alike in soul, though diverse in outer experience, neither West nor East will flourish if some form of disciplinary yoga be not practiced. The saint held me with his tranquil eyes. I did not realize that his speech was a veiled prophetic guidance. It is only now, as I write these words, that I understand the full meaning in the casual intimations he often gave me that someday I would carry India's teachings to America. Maharishi, I wish you would write a book on yoga for the benefit of the world. I am training disciples. They and their students will be living volumes, proof against the natural disintegrations of time and the unnatural interpretations of the critics. Bhaduri's wit put me into another gale of laughter. I remained alone with the yogi until his disciples arrived in the evening. Bhaduri Mahasaya entered one of his inimitable discourses. Like a peaceful flood, he swept away the mental debris of his listeners, floating them Godward. His striking parables were expressed in a flawless Bengali. This evening, Bhaduri expounded various philosophical points connected with the life of Mirabai, a medieval Rajputani princess who abandoned her court life to seek the company of sadhus. One great sannyasi refused to receive her because she was a woman. Her reply brought him humbly to her feet. Tell the master, she had said, that I did not know there was any male in the universe save God. Are we all not females before him? A scriptural conception of the Lord as the only positive creative principle, his creation being naught but a passive maya. Mirabai composed many ecstatic songs, which are still treasured in India. I translate one of them here. If by bathing daily God could be realized, sooner would I be a whale in the deep. If by eating roots and fruits he could be known gladly, would I choose the form of a goat? If the counting of rosaries uncovered him, I would say my prayers on mammoth beads. If bowing before stone images unveiled him, a flinty mountain I would humbly worship. If by drinking milk the Lord could be imbibed, many calves and children would know him. If abandoning one's wife would summon God, would not thousands be eunuchs? Mirabai knows that to find the Divine One, the only indispensable is love. Several students put rupees in Bhaduri's slippers, which lay by his side as he sat in yoga posture. This respectful offering, customary in India, indicates that the disciple places his material goods at the Guru's feet. Grateful friends are only the Lord in disguise, looking after his own. Master, you are wonderful. A student, taking his leave, gazed ardently at the patriarchal sage. You have renounced riches and comforts to seek God and teach us wisdom. It was well known that Bhaduri Mahasaya had forsaken great family wealth in his early childhood, when single-mindedly he entered the yogic path. You are reversing the case. The saint's face held a mild rebuke. I have left a few paltry rupees, a few petty pleasures, for a cosmic empire of endless bliss. How then have I denied myself anything? I know the joy of sharing the treasure. Is that a sacrifice? The short-sighted worldly folk are verily the real renunciates. They relinquish an unparalleled divine possession for a poor handful of earthly toys. I chuckled over this paradoxical view of renunciation, one which puts the cap of Croesus on any saintly beggar, whilst transforming all proud millionaires into unconscious martyrs. The divine order arranges our future more wisely than any insurance company. The master's concluding words were the realized creed of his faith. The world is full of uneasy believers in an outward security. Their bitter thoughts are like scars on their foreheads. The one who gave us air and milk from our first breath knows how to provide day by day for his devotees. I continued my after-school pilgrimages to the saint's door. With silent zeal, he aided me to attain Anubhava. One day he moved to Ram Mohan Roy Road, away from the neighborhood of my Gurpal Road home. His loving disciples had built him a new hermitage, known as Nagendra Math. 7-7. Although it throws me ahead of my story by a number of years, I will recount here the last words given to me by Bhaduri Mahasaya. Shortly before I embarked for the West, I sought him out and humbly knelt for his farewell blessing. Son, go to America. Take the dignity of hoary India for your shield. Victory is written on your brow. The noble distant people will well receive you. Chapter 8. India's great scientist, J.C. Bose. Jagadish Chandra Bose's wireless inventions antedated those of Marconi. Overhearing this provocative remark, I walked closer to a sidewalk group of professors engaged in scientific discussion. If my motive in joining them was racial pride, I regret it. I cannot deny my keen interest in evidence that India can play a leading part in physics, and not metaphysics alone. "What do you mean, sir?" the professor obligingly explained. Bose was the first one to invent a wireless coherer, and an instrument for indicating the refraction of electric waves. But the Indian scientist did not exploit his inventions commercially. He soon turned his attention from the inorganic to the organic world. His revolutionary discoveries as a plant physiologist are outpacing even his radical achievements as a physicist. I politely thanked my mentor. He added, "The great scientist is one of my brother professors at Presidency College." I paid a visit the next day to the sage at his home, which was close to mine on Gupar Road. I had long admired him from a respectful distance. The grave and retiring botanist greeted me graciously. He was a handsome, robust man in his 50s, with thick hair, broad forehead, and the abstracted eyes of a dreamer. The precision in his tones revealed the lifelong scientific habit. "I have recently returned from an expedition to scientific societies of the West. Their members exhibited intense interest in delicate instruments of my invention which demonstrate the indivisible unity of all life. 8-1. The Bose crescograph has the enormity of 10 million magnifications. The microscope enlarges only a few thousand times, yet it brought vital impetus to biological science. The crescograph opens incalculable vistas. You have done much, sir, to hasten the embrace of East and West in the impersonal arms of science." Jagadish Chandra Bose, India's great physicist, botanist, and inventor of the crescograph. I was educated at Cambridge. How admirable is the Western method of submitting all theory to scrupulous experimental verification. That empirical procedure has gone hand in hand with the gift for introspection which is my Eastern heritage. Together they have enabled me to sunder the silences of natural realms, long uncommunicative. The telltale charts of my crescograph 8-2 are evidence for the most skeptical that plants have a sensitive nervous system and a varied emotional life. Love, hate, joy, fear, pleasure, pain, excitability, stupor, and countless appropriate responses to stimuli are as universal in plants as in animals. The unique throb of life in all creation could seem only poetic imagery before your advent, Professor. A saint I once knew would never pluck flowers. Shall I rob the rose bush of its pride in beauty? Shall I cruelly affront its dignity by my rude divestment? His sympathetic words are verified literally through your discoveries. The poet is intimate with truth, while the scientist approaches awkwardly. Come some day to my laboratory and see the unequivocal testimony of the crescograph. Gratefully I accepted the invitation and took my departure. I heard later that the botanist had left Presidency College and was planning a research center in Calcutta. When the Bose Institute was opened, I attended the dedicatory services. Enthusiastic hundreds strolled over the premises. I was charmed with the artistry and spiritual symbolism of the new home of science. Its front gate, I noted, was a centuried relic from a distant shrine. Behind the lotus 8-3 fountain, a sculptured female figure with a torch conveyed the Indian respect for woman as the immortal light-bearer. The garden held a small temple consecrated to the noumenon beyond phenomena. Thought of the divine incorporeity was suggested by absence of any altar image. Bose's speech on this great occasion might have issued from the lips of one of the inspired ancient rishis. I dedicate today this institute as not merely a laboratory, but a temple. His reverent solemnity stole like an unseen cloak over the crowded auditorium. In the pursuit of my investigations, I was unconsciously led into the border region of physics and physiology. To my amazement, I found boundary lines vanishing and points of contact emerging between the realms of the living and the non-living. Inorganic matter was perceived as anything but inert. It was a thrill under the action of multitudinous forces. A universal reaction seemed to bring metal, plant, and animal under a common law. They all exhibited essentially the same phenomena of fatigue and depression, with possibilities of recovery and of exaltation, as well as the permanent irresponsiveness associated with death. Filled with awe at this stupendous generalization, it was with great hope that I announced my results before the Royal Society, results demonstrated by experiments. But the physiologist present advised me to confine myself to physical investigations, in which my success had been assured, rather than encroach on their preserves. I had unwittingly strayed into the domain of an unfamiliar caste system, and so offended its etiquette. An unconscious theological bias was also present, which confounds ignorance with faith. It is often forgotten that He who surrounded us with this ever-evolving mystery of creation has also implanted in us the desire to question and understand. Through many years of miscomprehension, I came to know that the life of a devotee of science is inevitably filled with unending struggle. It is for him to cast his life as an ardent offering regarding gain and loss, success and failure as one. In time, the leading scientific societies of the world accepted my theories and results and recognized the importance of the Indian contribution to science. 8-4. Can anything small or circumscribed ever satisfy the mind of India? By a continuous living tradition and a vital power of rejuvenescence, this land has readjusted itself through unnumbered transformations. Indians have always arisen who, discarding the immediate and absorbing prize of the hour, have sought for the realization of the highest ideals in life, not through passive renunciation, but through active struggle. The weakling who has refused the conflict, acquiring nothing, has had nothing to renounce. He alone who has striven and won can enrich the world by bestowing the fruits of his victorious experience. The work already carried out in the Bose laboratory on the response of matter and the unexpected revelations in plant life have opened out very extended regions of inquiry in physics, in physiology, in medicine, in agriculture, and even in psychology. Problems hitherto regarded as insoluble have now been brought within the sphere of experimental investigation. But high success is not to be obtained without rigid exactitude. Hence the long battery of supersensitive instruments and apparatus of my design, which stand before you today in their cases in the entrance hall. They tell you of the protracted efforts to get behind the deceptive seeming into the reality that remains unseen, of the continuous toil and persistence and resourcefulness called forth to overcome human limitations. All creative scientists know that the true laboratory is the mind, where behind illusions they uncover the laws of truth. The lectures given here will not be mere repetitions of second-hand knowledge. They will announce new discoveries demonstrated for the first time in these halls. Through regular publication of the work of the Institute, these Indian contributions will reach the whole world. They will become public property. No patents will ever be taken. The spirit of our national culture demands that we should forever be free from the desecration of utilizing knowledge only for personal gain. It is my further wish that the facilities of this institute be available, so far as possible, to workers from all countries. In this, I am attempting to carry on the traditions of my country. So far back as 25 centuries, India welcomed to its ancient universities, at Nalanda and Taxila, scholars from all parts of the world. Although science is neither of the East nor of the West, but rather international in its universality, yet India is specially fitted to make great contributions. 8-5. The burning Indian imagination, which can extort new order out of a mass of apparently contradictory facts, is held in check by the habit of concentration. This restraint confers the power to hold the mind to the pursuit of truth with an infinite patience. Tears stood in my eyes at the scientist's concluding words. Is patience not indeed a synonym of India, confounding time and the historians alike? I visited the research center again soon after the day of opening. The great botanist, mindful of his promise, took me to his quiet laboratory. I will attach the crescograph to this fern. The magnification is tremendous. If a snail's crawl were enlarged in the same proportion, the creature would appear to be traveling like an express train. My gaze was fixed eagerly on the screen, which reflected the magnified fern shadow. Minute life movements were now clearly perceptible. The plant was growing very slowly before my fascinated eyes. The scientist touched the tip of the fern with a small metal bar. The developing pantomime came to an abrupt halt, resuming the eloquent rhythms as soon as the rod was withdrawn. You saw how any slight outside interference is detrimental to the sensitive tissues, Bose remarked. Watch. I will now administer chloroform and then give an antidote. The effect of the chloroform discontinued all growth. The antidote was revivifying. The evolutionary gestures on the screen held me more raptly than a movie plot. My companion, here in the role of villain, thrust a sharp instrument through a part of the fern. Pain was indicated by spasmodic flutters. When he passed a razor partially through the stem, the shadow was violently agitated, then stilled itself with the final punctuation of death. By first chloroforming a huge tree, I achieved a successful transplantation. Usually, such monarchs of the forest die very quickly after being moved. Jagadish smiled happily as he recounted the life-saving maneuver. Graphs of my delicate apparatus have proved that trees possess a circulatory system. Their sap movements correspond to the blood pressure of animal bodies. The ascent of sap is not explicable on the mechanical grounds ordinarily advanced, such as capillary attraction. The phenomenon has been solved through the crescograph as the activity of living cells. Peristaltic waves issue from a cylindrical tube which extends down a tree and serves as an actual heart. The more deeply we perceive, the more striking becomes the evidence that a uniform plan links every form in manifold nature. The great scientist pointed to another Bose instrument. I will show you experiments on a piece of tin. The life force in metals responds adversely or beneficially to stimuli. Ink markings will register the various reactions. Deeply engrossed, I watched the graph, which recorded the characteristic waves of atomic structure. When the professor applied chloroform to the tin, the vibratory writings stopped. They recommenced as the metal slowly regained its normal state. My companion dispensed a poisonous chemical. Simultaneous with the quivering end of the tin, the needle dramatically wrote on the chart a death notice. Bose instruments have demonstrated that metals, such as the steel used in scissors and machinery, are subject to fatigue and regain efficiency by periodic rest. The life pulse in metals is seriously harmed or even extinguished through the application of electric currents or heavy pressure. I looked around the room at the numerous inventions, eloquent testimony of a tireless ingenuity. Sir, it is lamentable that mass agricultural development is not speeded by fuller use of your marvelous mechanisms. Would it not be easily possible to employ some of them in quick laboratory experiments to indicate the influence of various types of fertilizers on plant growth? You are right. Countless uses of Bose instruments will be made by future generations. The scientist seldom knows contemporaneous reward. It is enough to possess the joy of creative service. With expressions of unreserved gratitude to the indefatigable sage, I took my leave. Can the astonishing fertility of his genius ever be exhausted? I thought. No diminution came with the years. Inventing an intricate instrument, the resonant cardiograph, Bose then pursued extensive researches on innumerable Indian plants. An enormous, unsuspected pharmacopoeia of useful drugs was revealed. The cardiograph is constructed with an unerring accuracy, by which a 100th part of a second is indicated on a graph. Resonant records measure infinitesimal pulsations in plant, animal, and human structure. The great botanist predicted that use of his cardiograph will lead to vivisection on plants instead of animals. Side-by-side recordings of the effects of a medicine given simultaneously to a plant and an animal have shown astounding unanimity in result, he pointed out. Everything in man has been foreshadowed in the plant. Experimentation on vegetation will contribute to lessening of human suffering. Years later, Bose's pioneer plant findings were substantiated by other scientists. Work done in 1938 at Columbia University was reported by the New York Times as follows. It has been determined within the past few years that when the nerves transmit messages between the brain and other parts of the body, tiny electrical impulses are being generated. These impulses have been measured by delicate galvanometers and magnified millions of times by modern amplifying apparatus. Until now, no satisfactory method had been found to study the passages of the impulses along the nerve fibers in living animals or man because of the great speed with which these impulses travel. Drs. K.S. Cole and H.J. Curtis reported having discovered that the long single cells of the freshwater plant Nitella, used frequently in goldfish bowls, are virtually identical with those of single nerve fibers. Furthermore, they found that Nitella fibers, on being excited, propagate electrical waves that are similar in every way, except velocity, to those of the nerve fibers in animals and man. The electrical nerve impulses in the plant were found to be much slower than those in animals. This discovery was therefore seized upon by the Columbia workers as a means for taking slow motion pictures of the passage of the electrical impulses in nerves. The Nitella plant thus may become a sort of Rosetta Stone for deciphering the closely guarded secrets close to the very borderland of mind and matter. The poet Rabindranath Tagore was a stalwart friend of India's idealistic scientist. To him, the sweet Bengali singer addressed the following lines. O hermit, call thou in the authentic words of that old hymn called Sama. Rise, awake, call to the man who boasts his shastric lore from vain pedantic wranglings profitless. Call to that foolish braggart to come forth out on the face of nature, this broad earth. Send forth this call unto thy scholar band. Together round thy sacrifice of fire let them all gather. So may our India, our ancient land, to herself return. Once again return to steadfast work, to duty and devotion, to her trance of earnest meditation. Let her sit once more unruffled, greedless, strifeless, pure. Oh, once again upon her lofty seat and platform, teacher of all lands,